For centuries, the name Rockefeller has been synonymous with wealth and philanthropy.
He believed in patience. He thought the same thing about his philanthropy.
Today, the David Rockefeller Fund is one of the most important philanthropic organizations in the USA. CEO Lourdes Rodriguez is here with me now. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
In 2017, all the personal possessions of David Rockefeller were auctioned. It what turned out to be the biggest auction of the day, with over $832 million assembled for good causes. Would you say it was a tipping point in philanthropy?
This was shortly after the Giving Pledge had been established by Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, and David Sr. was one of the first signees. So it was a big deal because he was signaling through his example this call to other people of means to make that kind of commitment that at least half of their wealth would be dedicated to philanthropy. So I would say this was in a moment that was not usually the way that people were organizing their estates. This was really important.
How has philanthropy changed since the creation of the fund to today?
So the David Rockefeller Fund was started 35 years ago. And at the time, it functioned more like a charitable organization. And it wasn't until 2015 that when the grandchildren of David started to join the board with their parents, that we started to organize the work more along the lines of strategy and programmatic areas rather than charitable. So I would say that the change has been a transformation towards thinking about impact more broadly than just charitable purposes.
What was David Rockefeller's idea about philanthropy, if you could please sum it up?
The fund was established to bring his family together and learn how to live a life of service. So the institution served that purpose. But in terms of his approach to philanthropy, he believed in patience, just like he did with his investments, this idea that you needed to accompany the people that were doing the work for a long time and be patient in your investment. He thought the same thing about his philanthropy.
But it's difficult to be patient today when everything happens so quickly.
It is very difficult, in part because there's an expectation that I want impact and I want it now and I want it in a year. And especially in the areas that we support work in the areas of justice, climate, and arts for social change. Things happen at the time that they happen. They do not happen over a year period, so patience is very important, for sure.
How difficult is it to balance the legacy of the name Rockefeller with the modern times?
So when I think about legacy, I think about the possibility of lending our name to highlight the work of the organizations that we support so that we can do more than just write a check. We can provide the kind of validation that oftentimes a lot of the work does not get on its own merit. It should get it on its own merit, but the name provides an additional validation for the work of the leaders that we support.
Lourdes, your background is in public health at Columbia University. What have you brought from your previous sector into the fund now?
So I think about my contribution to the organization as bringing the tools of public health research to understanding how the organizations that we support and the work that we support operates as an ecosystem and operates in the context of much larger social issues. Oftentimes in philanthropy, we commit the mistake of only supporting programmatic work, and we don't think about policies, for example, or we don't think about the context in which the work is happening. So my skills as a public health researcher help us think with our grantees in partnership about how to do the work even better, more effectively.
So how do you measure success?
I think about success as ensuring that the people that we support have everything that they need. When our grantees identify the things that they need and we can provide the support, that's what I call success.
So what would you say are the biggest changes in philanthropy?
In the US context, I would say that there has been a movement towards sharing power and access to the privilege that many of the philanthropic organizations have. Some people call this trust-based philanthropy, is when we are not encumbered by all sorts of trappings of making philanthropic activities, be cumbersome and hard on the people that we support. So for me, that is the biggest impact that I have seen in the field in the past 20 years.
Would you say there's a bigger need? Would you say there is a need for greater cooperation between the private and public sector to help those in need?
The type of collaboration that we need is thinking about philanthropy as supporting innovation in ways that we cut the edge from taking a risk on something new or in supporting leaders that usually do not have access to decision-making tables. We can, because we are focused on mission, we can take that kind of risk in making those kinds of investments, and then we can have the private sector or the governmental sector incorporate some of the lessons that have been accrued through the work that our grantees do.
To what extent is technology important in philanthropy? Has it eased the process?
Well, grant making is easier in terms of the administration and the management of the work, but I would say that it's the relationships and the connection to folks that really sustains the work. For example, giving circles, which are, in Puerto Rico, we call them tandas, and in Latin America, that has been a tradition of mutual aid, where people accrue resources and they share them among the members of that tanda. Technology has now allowed for crowdsourcing applications that allow for a very similar mutual aid to be shared amongst individuals that may be within the same social context. They are not dependent on a family of wealth to be contributing.
With so many people using social media today, would you say we have become more or less empathetic as a society?
That is a tough question, Anna.
It's your personal opinion.
I will say that we have found a way to magnify our differences. And I am hopeful that we can walk our way back from that kind of polarization. I think that there is an opportunity to be able to be in community with people who are different than you, that can be created. I have hope that can be created. But right now, I am a little bit concerned that polarization is something that still exists.
On a more positive note,
yes, please.
What are the achievements of the David Rockefeller Fund you are most proud of?
So I wish I could take credit for most of them, but I have only been at the helm of the organization for 2 years. I will say that thinking about our endowments and how it's invested as much as we think about our grant making is one of the things that I'm most proud of. And I'll explain. In the context of US philanthropy, philanthropic organizations are only expected to give at a minimum 5% of their earnings from their endowments towards charitable purposes. So that means that the other 95% gets unused. It just gets invested. With the movement towards impact investing, we see now people putting their investments towards mission. And so in the case of the David Rockefeller Fund, in 2015, the board made a decision to divest from fossil fuels. In part because if we're working in support of climate and environmental justice, we cannot be undoing with one hand while we're trying to build with the other. So that's one of the things that I'm most proud of.
You mentioned public health. What are some other topics you're especially passionate about?
Oh, I think about relationship building and the way that the work that you're seeing now is supporting leaders that no matter where they go, they will take those values that you share with them wherever you go. So this idea that you are nurturing people, I think of people as the most important renewable resource that we have in the planet. So I think about building the leadership of people that may have been made to feel invisible in the past. So creating those opportunities, for me, brings me so much joy.
Thank you very much for your time.